The expansion of the empire under Trajan takes Rome to its greatest extent. Now the empire, plagued for its entire existence by scandal, oppression, murder, and suicide, will slowly begin to crumble. This is Rome, a history in images. Before we continue with our story, let us go back a bit and see some other places and objects from the first couple of centuries of the Roman Empire. Here we see the Ponte Cestio, a bridge built in the 1st century BC. However, most of what we see in this photo is a reconstruction of the bridge done in the 19th century. Now, the Ponte Fabrizio is more impressive in that it is the oldest bridge in Rome that is still in its original condition. It dates from 62 BC. This pyramid certainly stands out in stark contrast to other structures from ancient Rome. Finished around 12 BC, the Pyramid of Cestius was built to honor a famous Roman general and senator. This is the Basilica of Neptune, built by Roman general Marcus Agrippa. The word basilica refers to a public building, often a court building. This Basilica of Neptune is located at the back of the famous Pantheon. The Portico di Ottavia was built around 27 BC. Its ancient walkways enclosed 2 Roman temples. Here we see a rare glimpse of ancient Roman apartments. This Insula Romana is located at the Capitoline Hill. And this ancient apartment complex from the same era is located near the Palatine Hill. These stunning examples of wall opusectile, or what we would call wall inlays made from marble and granite, give us a glimpse of the original splendor of ancient Rome, a glimpse that goes beyond the crumbling ruins we normally associate with the city. These 2,000-year-old samples can be found in the Palatine Museum. Also at the Palatine is this head of Apollo dating from the 1st century AD, this base from a column of the imperial palace of the 4th century AD, and various other artworks from this era. The Baths of Caracalla were a huge bathing facility. Built in the early 200s, the baths were free to the public and could hold up to 1,600 bathers at a time. Now, what is left are these haunting ruins. The Capitoline Museum has some amazing sculptures from this era. Boy with Mask of Silenus dates from the 2nd century AD, while this central figure is from the 1st century AD. Other famous sculptures include the Dying Gaul from the 1st century BC, Hercules slaying the Hydra, this colossal statue of the god Ocean, and the Spinario statue, a likeness of a boy removing a thorn from his foot. If you visit Rome, the Capitoline Museum with its many impressive sculptures is well worth a visit. Emperor Hadrian dies in 138 AD. Antoninus Pius succeeds him. A serene man, his reign is marked by peace. He is known as one of the 5 good emperors of Rome. When he dies of an illness in 161, he is succeeded by 2 men, both of whom were his adopted sons. The co-emperors Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus both rule, but Aurelius is clearly the more famous of the 2. The bust of Marcus Aurelius you see here can be found in the Vatican museums. He goes to war with his neighbors. The period known as the Pax Romana comes to an end. He is also a writer, and his philosophical work, the Meditations, is well known to this day. He dies in 180 from natural causes, his ashes placed in Hadrian's Mausoleum. This famous monument to Marcus Aurelius can be found in the Capitoline Museum and dates from 176 AD, 4 years before his death. His column is seen here. Modeled after Trajan's column, the column of Marcus Aurelius honors the late emperor and was completed in 193. His son, Commodus, succeeds him. An athletic man who enjoys physical activities, he participates in chariot races, hunts animals every morning, and fights in gladiatorial contests every afternoon. Known as a dictator, he is assassinated in 192, strangled by his own personal trainer while taking a bath. Pertinax is assassinated. Didius Julianus is killed by a soldier. Pesinius Niger is captured while trying to flee his assassins and is beheaded, and Clodius Albinus commits suicide after a military defeat. Septimus Severus, the murderer of Didius Julianus, dies from an infection in 211. The civil wars come to an end but leave the empire divided and vulnerable. This arch in the Roman Forum honors Septimus Severus, most especially his victories against the Parthian Empire. The 3rd century AD is a difficult one for the Roman Empire. Barbarians from the north continue to attack, and the economy suffers greatly. The Roman populace is often confused by multiple emperors, simultaneously laying claim to various provinces. The entire empire is brought to the very brink of total collapse. Moreover, in the east, Shapur I comes to power, calling himself the King of Kings of Iran and non-Iran. This title is a challenge to Rome. The east is beginning to look a lot more stable than the west, and increasing in power and influence. Shapur I shocks Rome by taking nearly 40 Roman cities. Emperor Valerian counters with 70,000 soldiers. Not only are the Roman troops stopped by the plague and cornered by the enemy, but Valerian is taken prisoner and dies in captivity. His co-emperor remains in power until being assassinated in 268. Emperor Aurelian reunites the empire in the 270s. For security, he builds the famous Aurelian Wall around the city. A few emperors later, Diocletian comes to power. Emperor from 284 to 305 AD, Diocletian brings stability to the empire. He also brings horrible persecution to the Christians. He sees these believers as those who anger the Roman gods, thus bringing instability to the empire. He forbids Christians from serving in the armed forces. He destroys churches, burns scriptural texts, and executes Christians by beheading or sometimes by being slowly roasted to death. All Christian clergy are arrested. Let us pause here and briefly consider some artworks that remind us of these ancient times. These can be found in the Vatican museums. We do a quick visit to see the Arch of Janus, constructed around this time. This unusually shaped structure has an unclear purpose, but it is probably a marker of some kind and not a triumphal arch. Some suppose that it may be dedicated to the next emperor we will discuss, Constantine. This colossal statue of Constantine greets visitors as soon as they enter the Capitoline Museum. In pieces now, for example this arm, this colossal statue pays tribute to the emperor. Constantine has a famous vision of a cross and hears a voice saying, "By this sign you will conquer." He has the cross put on all standards. He also moves the center of the empire to Byzantium and renames it Constantinople. The Pope remains a bishop of Rome and resides in Rome. This allows the Eternal City to have a more spiritual than political meaning. We will say more about the beginnings of the Church and the development of the papacy in a future episode of this series. Constantine curbs inflation, reorganizes the Roman armies, and fortifies defenses against the barbarians. He not only puts a halt to Christian persecutions, but has all confiscated lands returned to the Church. The Edict of Milan of 313 officially declares toleration of Christians throughout the empire, essentially legalizing Christianity. Praised by most for his great accomplishments, Constantine is baptized on his deathbed and dies in 337. This great arch, the Arch of Constantine, probably the most famous in all of Rome, honors this great emperor. It is a big attraction for tourists and is located right next to the Colosseum. He leaves the empire to his three sons, Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. Constantine II is killed in an attempt to grab too much power, defeated by Constans. Constantius kills several family members in order to consolidate power. Manientius leads a group of conspirators against Constans and kills him in 350. Constantius battles and defeats Manientius, who commits suicide. Constantius remains emperor until dying of a fever in 361. Like his father, Constantius was baptized on his deathbed. His successor, named Julian, rejects Christianity altogether. This is why he is remembered as Julian the Apostate. The remaining Roman emperors lived through a time of chaos, war, and barbarian incursions. Over the next 100 years, the emperors are most often co-emperors, ruling over East and West. Bribery and assassination are often used by the men competing for power over the crumbling empire. Let us take a moment to visit the Vicus Caprarius, structures that were transformed into stately imperial homes during this time. Discovered underground in 1999, a short distance from the Trevi Fountain, these extensive findings give us an idea of how some people lived in Rome during the 4th century. Attila the Hun invades Gaul with 300,000 men, taking many cities before beginning an invasion of Italy. Though the Hun seems to be unstoppable, Pope Leo I famously convinces Attila to turn back and spare Rome. Attila dies not long after, and his empire crumbles. Barbarians take over certain parts of Europe, changing the names of some places forever. For example, the Huns settle in Central Europe, giving Hungary its name. The Lombards settle in northern Italy, an area we now call Lombardy. And the Franks settle in Gaul, giving that area its current name of France. The last emperors of Rome were mere puppets of powerful Germanic kings. The very last Western Roman emperor was Flavius Romulus Augustus, who took the throne at the tender age of 15 in the year 475. The boy was derided by his diminutive title of Romulus Augustulus, or Little Augustus. After a Germanic officer killed the emperor's father, who was an important Roman general at the time, the Germanic barbarians sent young Flavius Romulus Augustus into exile. The boy, bearing the name of the very first king of Rome from over 1,000 years before, disappeared from history, living the rest of his life in obscurity. The imperial insignia was sent to Constantinople, and the Roman Empire in the West came to an end. The empire in the East survived for much longer, known to historians as the Byzantine Empire. It is only appropriate that we end with some pictures of the Roman Forum. Once a beehive of activity in the center of government in Rome, a place where people shopped for goods, worshipped the Roman gods, and talked politics, it remains now in ruins. These may seem like dark times, but Christianity, after having survived many persecutions, continued to flourish. We follow this amazing story and pay a visit to the churches of Rome in our next episode.